your questions and diving a little deeper. This is the Midweek Rewind.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Midweek Rewind. As always, we're grateful for you spending some time with us today. My name is Matt, and I'm excited to be joined with the man himself. Pastor Brent is with us again today. So, hey Brent, happy Thursday to you.
Happy Thursday to you. We got some rain this morning. It's humid out. We got the big, I call it the Guinness Book of World Records garage sale going on in our church. How many do you hear came in the first hour?
Kyle told me there were 600 people at the door in the first hour this morning. And so, I mean, it was raining, people are wearing masks, and people are still coming to buy a whole bunch of very valuable things.
It is. It's really a fascinating study of humanity and nature and why we, and myself included, why we cling for something we don't have physically. You know, we long for it, and there's some satisfaction that comes when you pay $1 for a pair of jeans or something, and who cares if someone else has worn them 100 times? You now got a pair of jeans, and I'm thinking, it's crazy.
I don't know if you've noticed this year, Brent, but every year we joke that there's a very specific garage sale smell in this church. Like the week leading up to the garage sale, you walk in and it just hits you. You just smell garage sale. It's not quite as bad this year. I don't know if people are just Cloroxing more because of COVID or what, but it's not quite as intoxicating as usual.
But it's a pretty, and if you're listening, you're here in Wichita and you want to support a good cause, then stop on by, buy some used clothes, a pair of shoes, a cabinet, a chair, and it certainly does help our youth. But
they raise a ton of money every year, over 10,000 every year. So I mean, it's very helpful for scholarships for camps and mission trips and stuff. So yeah, that's going on not too far away from us, like right over there. And then Brent, you and I are in this continual, I mean, mostly you, but in this continual battle of can we meet? Can't we meet? Do we have to wear masks? Do we have to be 6 feet away? Every time I talk to you, there's some new rule or some new rumor or some new breaking news that we have to navigate as far as COVID and what that means for our public gatherings. So let's just kick things off. So yesterday, the Sedgwick County Health Commissioner, or whoever, Dr. Mims, he had another new announcement that is kind of shaking things up a little bit. So we're recording at 12 o'clock on Thursday. This will probably be different in a couple hours, but Brent, can you catch us up? What your understanding of the rules and what that means for Sunday?
Yeah, and everything I say comes with a little asterisk, a little disclaimer that says this may not even be true in the moment, and it virtually is certainly not going to be true a few hours, but we are trying to discern when you have recommendations, regulations, mandates from the CDC, the KDHE, Kansas Department of Health and Environment, the state, the county, the city, and then you add in the Sedgwick County Health Director. You have, that's a convoluted mess because they're not all in agreement with each other. And so you're always trying to interpret. And now, as of yesterday, what is clear is Dr. Mims put in some kind of emergency countywide health directive that required masks, which is nothing new. The city of Wichita had already made that regulation. He expanded it to Sedgwick County. But then the really confusing part, phase 3 of the Ad Astra plan for Kansas. And it has something about a 45-person limit for mass gatherings. But it says recommended. But then I've heard from a couple other pastors that he said he was shifting the recommendation to a requirement. And so at this point, we don't know what's happening for Sunday, and we're all relaxed. We're not up in arms. We'll figure it out, and we'll let people know. But this is a really fluid situation. And it is COVID. Like, if you're a structured person, I'm sorry. If you want black and white answers today, I'm sorry. it is just so fluid, and it is just so frustrating to not know what tomorrow brings. And yet we're never there in knowing, but we have lived with a generally reliable calendar. We've gotten used to putting stuff on, saying next week and the next and the next and the next, we're going to have church. Like we get used to knowing the future in that sense. And so there's an angst that gets y'all kind of tied up when you don't know what you've been used to knowing. You know?
Yep. And this is just so hard, Brent, because I mean, you and I have kind of joked about it. There are people who are super passionate that we need to do, even if the government makes it illegal, we need to meet every week, no matter what. Then there are people equally as passionate who say, nope, if I walk in this building with that many people, there's a chance I'm going to get sick and I'm putting others at risk. So nope, I'm not going to do it. And they're both good Christian people, right? And you and I happen to land somewhere in the middle on this thing. We change this every day, but so it's just hard. And hey, how about this for a transition? On Sunday, we talked about how to make good decisions, right? And we're smack dab in the middle of just a season where making decisions is even harder than ever before. And we're having to decide all kinds of things we've never had to decide before. And so we're in the middle of this mind game series. And again, we talked about decisions. Do you want to give a quick recap? I've got a couple questions for you, but remind us some of your highlights from Sunday.
Yeah. So decision-making paralysis or decision-making regret, really. So yeah, we tossed that around a bit. And basically, I don't know if it fell flat or not, Matt, but I kind of said, hey, the single most critical thing to help you in making decisions and working through all the choice overload and, making the best decision and processing what the fallout's going to be. Are you ready for this? I kind of worked it up, ask for help. And so the sermon basically said, if we're going to start anywhere with decision making, we really should ask the creator of heaven and earth to help us. Like, he's smart. The dilemma is, how do you hear the voice of God? And I just said, for starters, what if you actually took a step of faith in asking God for help in a decision? And you asked him, and then you sat there for 10 minutes. Like, I'd put some money down, Matt, that most Christians haven't ever done that. But what if we actually displayed a trust? Now, I know you might get to the end of 10 minutes and you don't know if you've heard anything or not, but at least you've honored God by trying to do it. So first step is to actually ask God for help. Second step is ask people for help. Like, there are some smart people that can actually help. And then you actually have to make a decision. And then the fourth thing that I said, dedicate the decision. Like, and this is what I've done dozens of times. And I've just said, okay, God, there's 1,000 pros and cons, and I could have had multiple decisions that were good. But this is where I've landed. I've asked you for help. I've asked some other people for wise advice. This is where I'm at. My heart's right. I'm trying to do the right thing. I don't want to screw anything up. I'm dedicating this decision.
Yeah.
See, what all this does, Matt, is it puts, Proverbs 3:5-6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Okay. Part 2, don't lean on your own pros and cons list. Don't lean on your own understanding. Don't go there first. Trust the Lord first. Don't lean on your own pros and cons list, your logic, your experience. In all your ways, acknowledge him. Another way of saying that, in every situation, involve him. So what you're doing in your decision-making process is you're involving God, the creator of heaven and earth. Now, you're asking him for advice, you make the decision, and then you dedicate it to him. You said, God, I'm just trying to do what you want me to do. I'm just trying to involve you in this. Like, you're smart, you're my savior, you're my king. I don't always hear your voice. I get to the end of asking you and asking others for help, and it's still not always clear. But I've made this decision, and I've tried to process it in a way that honors you. I dedicate this. So please show your mercy. So even when we have made a decision at staff about when to reopen church, or how we do social distancing, or whether we provide the stickers, when people come
Mhm.
in, or whatever. The best thing we can do is just try to involve God, involve other people, make a decision, and then throw ourselves at the foot of the Savior and say, Lord, so I'm buying this car, I'm
Mhm.
buying this house and not this one. Try to handle this process well. Show your mercy. I dedicate it to you. And then you've done all you can do.
Mhm.
But you might even get to the end of that and look back and say, boy, that wasn't the best decision. But
Mhm.
again, the process of decision making, it sure will, in my mind, it brings peace. When I ask God, ask others, I make the decision and then I dedicate it.
Mhm. Yeah,
But
no.
we have hard decisions, and you're not this side of heaven. There's going to be murky ones.
Yeah. And I think all of us, when we have to make decisions, what we want is we want to have some kind of feeling that we're making the right call. Like before we make the call, we want to have this feeling like, okay, this is it. Like this is hard, but this is it. I know this is it. And there's just times where you're never going to feel that. And you won't know until later if it was a good decision. And you might not even know later if it was a good decision. And I think that's just all the uncertainty and all the pressure we feel that comes with that is just, there's not an answer for it. Like I think you can't, like you said, you kind of hyped up that the only thing you can do is ask for help. There's no secret, and none of us do this perfectly every time. It's just part of being human is doing the best we can with what we've got. And then I really like what you said about the asking God to bless it when you make a decision. That's the one. A lot of the things you had said or things we've probably talked about before, but I hadn't really thought about that is when you have a really hard decision, taking time to dedicate it and just being honest with God and saying, doing the best I can, here's what I've got, now it's yours. I think that was a good insight I hadn't thought about before.
Yeah, and it just gets complicated, Matt, because this side of heaven, we're just going to be caught between a rock and a hard place in so many decisions where
Mhm.
you're actually looking for the lesser of two evils. Or, there's so many decisions where I just look at people and I say, whatever decision you make, you're going to have angst.
Mhm.
There is no decision that won't leave you with because of the decision.
Mhm.
And too often I've quoted Rahab from the Old Testament. She was a woman of the night, and she gets logged in Hebrews 11 in the Hall of Faith, but she was between a rock and a hard place, and I've sometimes described it this way. So anyway, she was in Jericho, and some Israelites kind of scat out the city for a potential attack, and for whatever reason, she ended up hiding them. And she had a knock on the door, and the question was, "Do you know where the spies were?" Well, she had hit them, and I think they had already run down the road, but they thought they were still there. Whatever the case, a knock on the door. Hey, are the spies there? Are the men there? And she had a decision. She could lie or
Mhm.
she could tell the truth. Either way, she was, and I'm just going to use this language, she was going to put one foot in heaven and one foot in hell. She was between a rock and a hard place, because if she told the truth and said, yeah, they just ran down that road, they just left, if you could go chase them, that's where they're at.
Mhm.
She would have been obeying God in the sense that she would have been telling the truth.
Right.
Her other foot would be in hell. That is, she would be turning in innocent men.
Mhm.
She would not be following do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So
Yeah.
she's telling the truth, which is a good thing, but she's betraying innocent men, which is a bad thing.
Right.
In that decision, she lied. She
Mhm.
had a foot in hell. It was a flat out, blatant lie.
Mhm.
It was a sin.
Mhm.
Okay. But while she sinned, Okay. And I'm not saying the end justifies the means. I'm just saying
Mhm.
with one foot in hell over the lie, she had another foot in heaven because she was protecting innocent men.
Right.
Okay.
Mhm.
There was no win.
Mhm.
There was no decision she could have made that was all good.
Mhm.
Rock in a hard place.
Yep.
And so some decisions we ask God, we ask others, we land on a decision, we dedicate that decision to God.
Mhm. Yep. And I think it comes back to that Proverbs 3, the whole trust thing, is that if we really believe God is who he says he is, we have to trust that even if we make a bad decision, he's gonna figure out a way to make it all work. Like I think about, where I went to college or who I married or what jobs I've taken. If I would have gone a different route, I have to trust that that wouldn't, crumble my life and shatter God's plan for the world. And I mean, at some point, you just have to let go of that too, right? Isn't that part of this too?
You hate to say it, but you just need to lower the bar
Yeah.
and give yourself permission to make mistakes and give yourself permission to know that you're going to make a whole bunch of other decisions that hindsight is 2020 on.
Hmm.
And it's not worth the emotional energy. It's to say that you are living up to a standard of non-humanness by only making right decisions. It's just a burden that you shouldn't carry.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's a sense in which you just have to lower the bar a little bit and
Hmm.
say, hey, I'll do my best. I'm going to face a lot of decisions. A, I'm going to make some bad ones.
Hmm.
B, I'm going to have to make some decisions where there's no win.
Hmm.
But you can't go through life without making decisions.
Yeah.
So, Lord have mercy. I know I'm loved. I know I'm accepted. I know heaven someday. And in the midst of all this, I'm going to love people.
Hmm. Yep. One more thing we talked about on Sunday we haven't talked about yet is that there's a big divide we need to make about important and unimportant decisions. And again, this might seem kind of silly or like common sense or whatever, but you and I we're faced with how many thousand decisions a day did you say on Sunday? Thousands and thousands.
It's 35,000 decisions. And some of them are a decision to itch your nose. Okay.
Hmm.
You don't like process that. It just happens.
Right.
Okay. And then there are what they call cognitive decisions, where there's a process of actually deciding. So
Hmm.
you might be sitting in an interview and your nose has a little itch. You're going to decide not to itch it.
Hmm.
That's a cognitive decision.
Hmm.
If you're alone and it itches, you itch it without thinking.
Right.
Okay. And so researchers just have trouble labeling how many decisions that are cognitive and just instinctive.
Hmm.
Like tying your shoes, you don't sit there and process whether you should tie your shoe. You just do it, but it's a
Right.
decision you make. But regardless, 35,000 somehow.
Yeah. And
So
still,
all of
like,
that, now you lost your train of thought.
no,
Whatever.
no,
Okay,
no,
good.
it's good. So I think part of what's hard about being alive today is even though a lot of those cognitive decisions are small, they add up, right? So I think we have to decide what we're going to wear and then what we're going to eat for breakfast and then what route we're going to take to work and what we listen to work and then what we're going to eat for lunch. And I think there are more of those decisions that have to be made now than ever before. And I think even if they're silly little things, they add up and they make harder decisions harder because we've already made 34,000 decisions before we got to that one. And one interesting thing I heard, Brent, I don't know if you've heard this before, but Steve Jobs, the Apple guy, one reason why he always wore black turtleneck jeans and tennis shoes is he didn't want to have to make that decision every day. He wore the same thing every day to make one less decision. And I've heard, like, I think President Obama was kind of similar. He only had a certain number of suits to choose from, and there are other and I think Craig Rochelle does something kind of similar, where he lets someone else decide what he's going to wear. Because even just that repetitive
Yeah.
process of deciding something weighs on us, even if they're silly little decisions.
And I think it's a non-debate, Matt, that we do have choice overload today in a way that we never have.
Hmm.
Uh, I mean, even years ago, you had 10 car models to choose from.
Hmm.
Now you want to buy a car, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of options.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned Netflix, I think, has 4,300 movie choices and 1,200 TV shows.
Yep.
And so, yeah, big decisions or small ones, we are just faced with the overload, and it's draining.
Mm-hmm.
And we walk away, we put it off, or we just roll around in a fetal position, not making a decision. I don't know. It's just hard, though. It's hard.
Well, I'm glad he talked about, like, it's I think it's smart to just take a minute to think, okay, is this an important decision or not? Because like me and Tilly, at night when we're watching Netflix, if we're not careful, we could waste 10 or 15 minutes trying to decide what we're going to watch. And then we get mad at each other because neither of us wants to make a decision. But like, how silly, right? Like, it's silly. But I think all of us do that. Or like, if we have a lunch meeting, where do you want to go? I don't care. Where do you want to go? And it's just silly that it prolongs decisions, and it makes simple things complicated, and it just drains your mind. So I think it's smart to just say, this is not important. Let's just do this.
And Jesus was the king of simplifying things. And so I think there were something like 613 rules that the Pharisees had counted up in the Torah, or Genesis through Deuteronomy. So there were 600 plus rules. Talk about decision making, and Jesus reduced them to love God and love others.
Yep.
And part of our victory over decision making is to say, I just don't need to spend emotional energy on that decision. All things considered, it's not going to ruin anyone's life. It's not going to push the earth off its axis. It's a little thing. So I just have to keep telling myself, don't waste emotional energy on little things.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard enough to make the big decisions. I need an emotional tank that has a relative amount of energy to put into that processing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's good. I think that's a smart leadership thing for all of us, I think, is to figure out what little things can we not fuss about so we can have more mental capacity for the big ones. I think I'm convicted of that. I feel like I need to do a better job at that. So that's good. And then kind of just rolling right into this week, Brent. So all of us have been in a situation where we've made a tough decision. Hopefully we've prayed and asked others and dedicated it to God, but then sometimes we make bad choices. And that's what you're going to talk about this week, is dealing with that regret and that shame that comes after a bad decision. So anything else about this Sunday you want to start us off with?
I'll just toss out a couple of things. I am going to compare Judas, who had tremendous regret over betraying Jesus to the point that he took his own life. There is no, why do I say it? It's a horrible thing to be at a point of hopelessness and regret that you take your life. But Judas absolutely had regret.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then there's Paul, who had tremendous regret over beating, imprisoning, and killing Christians. So both of them had regrets at the highest level, betraying the Son of God and murdering Christians because they're Christians. So we might have lots of regrets, but they probably don't rise above the regrets of these two. They went down very different paths.
Mm-hmm.
Judas took his own life. Paul never forgot his regrets.
Mm-hmm.
He kept naming them.
Yep.
He said, I'm the worst of sinners.
Mm-hmm.
Look what I did. But he made some decisions, and we'll unpack those. He made some decisions that gave him freedom from the shame, the condemnation. And so we'll talk about how do we deal with regrets. Now, the regrets that we have basically fall into three categories. One is regret over a dumb decision that wasn't immoral. So you may decide impulsively to buy this car, and then you realize you didn't do your homework.
Mm-hmm.
It had some problems. and you're stuck with a bad deal. Now, that's not an immoral, sinful decision. It's just a bad decision. And then you have the sinful decisions. And it might be that you lied to a coworker, and you lost your job over it, or you got drunk and got a DUI, or you had an affair in your marriage. But these are regrets over sinful choices. So you have regrets over dumb decisions that weren't immoral. Regrets over immoral or sinful decisions. And then I think the one we might not always talk about as much is regrets over what you haven't done. So you say, well, I just regret that I've never been the father that I should have. Okay. And for all three, how do you forgive yourself? I think on our past, most people, that's just me, my opinion here, they can accept that God forgives them or that their wife forgives them. But how do I forgive myself for what I've done that's caused so much pain? I have so much regret. Okay, how do I forgive myself? So we'll work through that. And fortunately, the Bible has some good advice. So get out of bed. If you choose to come here, we don't know what Sunday's going to look like yet, but I'm assuming we'll have church. But we'll just have to wait and see, or whether you watch online. But the Word of God, it just keeps coming through with good advice on how to deal with a broken world.
Yeah. And regret is, I'm sure you'll talk about this on Sunday, or I'm guessing you will. Regret is hard and painful, but it's also how we learn, right? Like you usually, regret in a way is a good thing because you recognize good that could have come. So anyway, we'll talk about that more next Thursday.
Yeah, it's true. And if you don't have regret, you don't have a conscience. I mean, if you make mistakes and have no regrets about them, something's wrong with your moral compass. Something's wrong with your self-awareness. Something's wrong with your, if you have no regrets, that means you have no conscience. That's another, it's good that we have regret. It actually shows that we care. I have regret because that means I love that person that is hurt.
Right.
And if I betrayed that person, I have no regret, that's a bad deal. Regret shows a heart. And also we learn from it.
Yeah. All right, let's go. We got a couple minutes left here. Anything else left, Brent, on either decisions or regret you want to hit today?
I
might. Decision.
Well, yeah. So there's the serenity prayer, and I'm going on the fly here, but it's a little placard, where it says, "Give me the courage to accept the things I can't change," or whatever. And it's okay. And
grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.
Okay, so that's what fits on the little poster, but it's a longer prayer. And in the last part, there it is. In the last part, it says something about help me to accept this sinful world as it is, not as I wish it were. And then again, the right words are not that I might be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy in the next. And sometimes I honestly think we just expect heaven on earth and we expect supreme happiness. Well, no, I think you should expect to be reasonably happy. But let's not expect a perfect world in an imperfect world. And let's lower the bar just a tad. Let's try and make good decisions. Ask God, ask others, pray about it, make the decision, dedicate it to God. But can we just accept from the beginning that we're going to make a bunch of bad decisions over the next 5 years?
Yeah.
We don't want to, but we just want to do it reasonably well. And there's a sense that I hesitate to say lower the bar, but sometimes we're just too hard on ourselves over this decision-making process.
Yeah, that's good. Well, hey, it's just about time. I want to thank our friend Marcel's been commenting a couple times here. So thanks, Marcel, for chiming in with us here, and for the rest of you for watching. We're always grateful for your time with us today. And if you're watching or listening later on the podcast, grateful for your time as well. Thank you for being with us. And hey, we'll stay in touch about the church opening stuff. We got an email scheduled to go out this afternoon with the latest, but we'll see what happens later today and tomorrow. And hopefully we'll have people in the big room on Sunday. But if not, of course, online will still be an option. But if it's an option, you should come to church because we'd love to have you here. So,
Got it.
And hey, come to the garage sale. Come buy some pants or some VHS tapes or something.
They might even have an 8-track or two. You don't even know what that is.
Barely. So, all right. Well, hey, thanks everybody for watching. Again, we'll see you Sunday, and we'll be back here next Thursday tackling your questions. So thanks for your time. We'll see you later.
Thanks, everybody. Keep loving Jesus.
That's right.
Thanks for joining us today. Matt and Pastor Brent go live on the First MB Church Facebook page every Thursday at noon. If you can't watch live, the archive is available anytime on Facebook, YouTube, or the First MB app. If you prefer to listen on the go, you can also subscribe to the podcast by searching for the Midweek Rewind in your favorite podcast provider. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Midweek Rewind.